George Brandis is planning changes to the Racial Discrimination Act, saying Australians should be free to be bigoted.
Senator Brandis is pushing the law change after a court ruled against right-wing columnist Andrew Bolt for accusing fair-skinned Aboriginal people of using their heritage for financial gain.
People do have a right to be bigots, you know. In a free country, people do have rights to say things that other people find offensive or insulting or bigoted.
The federal government is currently proposing changes to the Racial Discrimination Act that will water down its impact. This has provoked a national debate on the topic of freedom of speech and protection from being offended on racial grounds. Undercurrent spoke to people from both sides of the debate.
I mean, you're imposing on a freedom that's been given to you from day dot, the moment you're born. So for this to be regulated the way it has been is a blatant attack on freedom of human rights as well as freedom of speech.
The mechanism that was adopted in 1995 by a previous Labor government to deal with the problem of racism in Section 18C was the political censorship method, and that is never the way to deal with a social problem.
It's going to give people back the right to say what they wish to say. It isn't going to cause riots, it's not going to cause massive crime rate increases, it's not going to cause individuals to be segregated from the population. There's no real change that's going to be affected from this, certainly not here in Australia.
It's deeply concerning that they're attempting to relax these laws because, I mean, we go back to 1995, these three big national inquiries, they found clear links between racial vilification and violence. If we take away the ability for people to resolve these tensions through conciliation, which I've been part of, I've seen it work, then the tension will just keep escalating and we'll see more racially motivated violence in Australia, which is not something we want here. And also it's going to reduce the ability of vulnerable people to recourse, particularly where it's done in a public, in the course of public discussion. Most people have defamation open to them, but that's a very expensive option. And if you haven't got a lot of money, you can't do a defamation action. Whereas this section at the moment allows people in those situations to get the apologies, to get the tension resolved.
If you can't handle what someone says, you need to look at your own sense of raising and how you have been raised as to whether or not you can actually accept being in a society. You need to expect that you're going to be spoken to, sometimes good, sometimes indifferent, sometimes bad. It happens everywhere.
Well, in the flora and fauna legislation where Aboriginal people were first mentioned in Western Australia, we were referred to as animals. We weren't seen as human beings. So to call an Aboriginal person an animal is extremely insulting and humiliating to an Aboriginal person. But if you call someone a monkey, an ordinary Australian might not feel that way.
At the heart of the case, to my way of thinking, is this question, Tony. In a free country, should people have the right to say things that other people find insulting or offensive or wounding? And I think they should.
Do you think part of the reason why you can't sympathise or recognise...
I didn't say I didn't sympathise.
But you can't seem to understand how that would cause enormous discomfort for somebody and they would withdraw from public life. Do you think that's because you're a white, able-bodied, heterosexual male?
No, I don't think that...
I do hope that this particular act is repealed. One Nation WA does support it. I personally do support it. I've come across no individuals in the right mindset that see this act as a bad thing to be repealed.
Look, there's so many human rights in Australia that we need to be talking about. It is a bit concerning that we're spending all this time and energy talking about freedom of expression when we have it so clearly here in Australia. Even though it's an implied right, people can and do say what they want in Australia. It's really important that we keep these laws, that we keep the Human Rights Commission funded to do it, and that people have the ability to recourse. So, you know, I'd like to see the Human Rights Commission and the government working on other human rights like economic, social and cultural rights, the right to housing, education, all that sort of stuff. We'd like them to spend a bit more time and energy on that rather than trying to protect a freedom that we already have.
The debate remains divisive. This has been Alicia Pereira reporting for Undercurrent.